Cómprate una daga si prefieres y vuélvete asesino de mujeres.
In this video, I'll be making Enchiladas de Fresnillo out of the Essential Cuisines of Mexico by Diana Kennedy, first published in the year 2000. I've cooked out of this book before and likely will many times in the future, as this book has a ton of recipes surveying the different regions of Mexico. This enchilada recipe is from Fresnillo, which is in the state of Zacatecas in the heart of central Mexico, just northwest of Mexico City. One of the reasons I wanted to do this recipe is to highlight how Mexico has many regional varieties in its food, and it's worth branching out and trying the near infinite numbers of enchiladas, salsas, tamales, moles, and everything else that you find outside of your average local Mexican restaurant. You'll see, I kind of say there's three tent poles to Mexican cuisine. There's many, many, many variations from all over the place, but there's sort of northern Mexican cuisine, there's central Mexican cuisine, and then there's Yucatecan cuisine as sort of three big families. But much like Indian food, there is a large amount of regional variety, and it's really worth making a lot of these recipes and checking them out to see which ones you prefer beyond what's just, what your average American city is going to sell you, because they're going to want to sell you exactly what every other Mexican restaurant is selling you, and not necessarily what's cooked in Mexico. So with all that being said, let's get started in the kitchen.
This is the setup for Enchiladas de Fresnillo. This is a little bit more of a complicated recipe, but it is going to be illustrative of how a lot of Mexican sauces and moles are made. I didn't include the quantities of everything just for difficulties of getting it all on the screen, because some of these have multiple elements. So this is essentially a cheese enchilada in a ancho poblano sauce. So we need sour cream. This is queso Oaxaca, and that's what I'm going to stuff the enchiladas with. That's more of a mozzarella type cheese. Queso fresco is Mexican crumbly cheese, and that's what's going to go on the top. These are some fresh made tortillas I made today. A cinnamon stick, Mexican style chorizo, which is very different from Spanish chorizo. So Spanish chorizo is more of a hard sausage, whereas Mexican chorizo is not. Mexican chorizo is kind of crumbly and very soft until you cook it. So this is an ancho pepper, which is a dried smoked poblano pepper. This is fresh marjoram from my garden, fresh thyme. This is black peppercorn and cloves, canola or vegetable oil, and then white onion, avocado, and radishes. Many of these elements are going to be garnishes at the end, and they're not all going to be involved at every step of the way here. And then this is if you want to get into Mexican cooking, it honestly is useful for other types of cuisine as well, but this is a molcajete or a mortar. And if the bigger the better, I've found, when you're making various things. So definitely get one of these if you really want to get into cooking. They're super useful. And I'll include a link in the description to the one that I use in my kitchen if you'd like to use that. So with that said, let's get started. First and foremost, we want to crush the spices. So go ahead and put your cinnamon stick and your cloves and your peppercorns in your molcajete. And then you just want to crush them and break them up into little bits. And then these will end up going into the sauce later. Okay, so this recipe is going to start off much like many, many, many Mexican sauces, which is by soaking the dried peppers. Obviously, you can't eat the dried pepper dry. That would be not great. So we're going to go ahead and put these anchos in here and let them soak under medium heat here. And after about 10 minutes, you can actually see already they're starting to color the water. And some sauces use that water as well, but this will get them nice and soft and ready for the blender. Okay, before we get too much further into the recipe, I did forget a few ingredients that are also going to go into the sauce. Another thing to mention is that Mexican sauces and moles often have a lot of ingredients in them. But a couple of these were because I was toasting them at the time, and so I didn't have them handy. But toasted peanuts, shelled, are going to go into this sauce, as well as toasted sesame seeds. And these are going to need to go into our molcajete and get ground in with the other spices as well as Mexican oregano. Now, this is not the same thing as regular oregano. If it's not too difficult to find on Amazon, maybe I'll put a link in the description to get it if you're unfamiliar with it. So it's not terribly difficult to find in its dried form. Some garden centers, even here in Tallahassee, Florida, occasionally carry it, the live plant, if you want fresh. But it is a different thing than regular oregano, so don't expect. Oftentimes, some recipes say you can swap it out. I don't. I just use the real thing. So let's go ahead and add the peanuts. And man, that cinnamon and the cloves, when you grind it up, is just a classic kitchen smell that's really good. So, okay. All right. You can see how I'm grinding these up in sort of a circular motion, and they'll start to become little bits and pieces. I'm not going to do that on camera the whole time. I just sort of wanted to demonstrate what it kind of looks like. That's a shell we don't need. All right, so I'm going to grind these up, and then when we're ready to make the sauce, we'll be back. We have all the ingredients ready now. You can see these are nice and, it doesn't have to be like a fine ground for this recipe. We just kind of need to have them into smaller chunks there so the blender can do its work easily. So we're going to go ahead and make the sauce for the enchiladas now. So get your slotted spoon, and you can see how nice and soft the peppers are now, and how they really dyed that water red. A lot of people think that things like pozole or just red sauce on enchiladas, that the red comes from tomatoes, and it does sometimes, but it's almost never from tomatoes. It's almost always from peppers, guajillo being the most frequently used sort of red colored, or that provides the red coloring. Anchos are a little darker than guajillos are, or chile de árbol. So I'll probably do a video at some point over like sort of a guide to Mexican culinary peppers and what they're generally used for, and how they're generally prepared a lot of the time. We didn't do it in this recipe, but a lot of the time actually you will toast the peppers on a comal or a hot skillet right before putting them in. Okay, we got the peppers in. Now we're going to go ahead and just add the rest of the ingredients. So we'll put a little bit of Mexican oregano. Not a ton of that. When you're putting in fresh herbs, by the way, you never really, I mean, I suppose there's an exception to just about everything in cooking. But you never really want to put the stems in. You just want the leaves. So I just pluck the leaves off and leave the stems behind. If a stem does get in there, it's not a huge deal most of the time, especially if it's a green stem. And yeah, if you're blending, it also makes less of an issue. This is the sweet marjoram, because it looks, a lot of these herbs can end up, they taste quite different, and when you grow them yourself, you can see how you can, by smell, you can really smell the difference. Thyme is pretty classic, to the point where, especially when you even just get sort of introductory level cooking, you don't really mistake it for anything else. There are a few different varieties. There's lemon thyme. You'll see like French thyme and Spanish thyme and other things in garden centers, and the one you really want is English thyme. That's culinary thyme. Most of the others, they're okay. They work. They taste like thyme, but generally speaking, when cookbooks say they want thyme, they want English thyme. And I also kind of agree that the flavor on English thyme is a little bit better than most. This is also another old cookbook, so it just says 3 sprigs, which, you know, plants grow differently. A sprig is probably means something different, but luckily with sauces like this where you're going to have a bunch of strong flavors like cloves and cinnamon and stuff in it, and ancho, like it's not a huge deal. However much you want to put in is generally fine. Even if you just love thyme and you want to put tons of extra thyme in there, haha, joke, then you're fine with doing that. All right, and now let's get the spice and nut mixture in here. Try to get in there and get as much of it in there as I can. And then we're going to put 2 tablespoons of oil. I might have overdid that a little bit, but again, these sauces tend to be very forgiving, and it's going to be cooked anyway, so a lot of that oil will burn off. And always, always, always we put in salt. So when you kind of just get a feel for how much salt is good when you cook long enough. And I guess that's why people say pinch of salt, although like I've said in previous videos, I've always hated that. And then the last thing is, in order to, if you were to hit go on the blender, this really wouldn't do very well right now because it's so many dry ingredients and not very much wet. So about 1.5 cups of just cold water. A lot of these sauces actually will have you use the water from the chili, the chilies were put in, but this recipe just doesn't for whatever reason. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and blend this up into the sauce, and then y'all don't wanna hear that. So then we'll go ahead and get to cooking the sauce on the stove. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and cook the sauce now. It came out a very rich. You can hear it sizzling as soon as it goes on. It came out as a very, I turned that up a little too high. I'm gonna turn that down. Again, this is another sort of characteristic of Mexican sauces. As you fry, you cook them. A lot of times you actually end up cooking them twice. But this is a beautiful sort of auburn brown sauce. And I need to stir this until it stops bubbling like that, or it will end up all over the place. I'm going to take it off the heat just for a second while the stove cools down a bit. And let's see if I can get some more of that sauce out of there. I also have the other pan there heating up because we're about to assemble. Now I'm just going to assemble a couple right now because this is actually what I'm cooking for my family for Sunday dinner. So we're going to assemble some of these right now as a demonstration for all of you, so you can see what the finished product looks like, and then I will be taking them over to my sister's house to feed everybody. Now we're going to be adding a little bit of a mess there, but we're going to be adding more of this sauce, or more water to this sauce later. So I'm actually going to leave that off to the side there for a minute and not wash out the pan yet, because when I add water, I might as well get more flavor by using the water to wash off the excess residue of the sauce that's still in the blender jar. Okay, let me grab the tortillas and we will get started while this continues to cook for a few minutes. Okay, so you can see, if you rewind the video and then come back again, you can see that the sauce has sort of changed colors again, and now it's more of a dark, almost like a milk chocolate color. So this pan is on medium heat right here, so let me go ahead and I'm just going to demonstrate the process essentially for rolling enchiladas. And to make a small plate here, And then I will let you guys go while I do this for my family. So be super careful in this part. This is very easy to burn yourself because you're dealing with hot pans and hot tortillas and hot sauce. Okay. So actually what you end up doing here is you want to dip the tortilla in the sauce to soak some of that up. And then we are going to fill it with cheese and some of the onion. And then roll that up. And it's all right, your hands are going to get dirty. This is a very rustic cuisine, and it doesn't even matter because there's going to be sauce that's poured on the top of this afterwards. So go ahead and just, the tortilla is going to get sauce on it anyway. Go ahead and be a little bit messy. This is not Michelin star cuisine. And actually, I'm kind of stupid here. You definitely you only need the sauce, essentially the inside, because again, there's going to be sauce that's poured across the top of this. So let's get some more cheese. And give yourself a nice as tight as you can get roll in here. All right. So after we do that I know that doesn't look all that appetizing right now. After we do all that for the rest of the enchiladas, then we're actually going to add more water to this sauce and boil it again. And then that's going to go on top. That boiling sauce is going to go on top of this again to hopefully melt the cheese and get it going. If you could also make this in advance and then just pop it in the oven at like 250 degrees for a few minutes to melt all the cheese on the inside and get it warm all the way through. Okay, then I will finish up here. I've got a lot more work in front of me and let you guys go, and we will come back at the point where we're putting on the garnish and the finished product. I am going to show you quickly one more thing, which is part of the garnish, making the garnish. Normally I don't show things like chopping vegetables or things like that, but I just want to show you, in case the only thing you're familiar with, if you're from Europe or from somewhere else where you only see Spanish chorizo, this is Mexican chorizo, which is very soft like this. And part of the garnish of these enchiladas is cooking some of this until it gets nice and firm into little bits, and then adding that to the top at the end. So again, just wanted to show you this part real quick. We don't need to, it's just frying sausage in a pan. It's nothing complicated. So, all right, we will get to the final assembly on the next video, part of the video. And here is the finished product. We cooked the sauce a little bit more after adding some water and put it over the cheese enchiladas. And then we added some white onion, some chopped radish, some slices of avocado, and our fried Mexican chorizo sausage. So this is Enchiladas de Fresnillo. And I encourage you to get the book and learn all about different kinds of enchiladas, different kinds of Mexican soups. There's so many out there that beyond what is normally served in your local Mexican restaurants. So if you enjoyed this recipe, if you enjoy any of my videos, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next time where hopefully I'll show you another dish that you've never tried before.